Hello and welcome to today's Bitrix24 webinar, Total Telephony. Thank you very much for joining today. Okay, so first of all, let's just go through some introductions. So my name is Sam Connor and I'm sales manager here at Interface. And to give you a background to ourselves, we are Bitrix24 Gold partners based in the UK, the US and Hong Kong. And we offer a full range of services to assist you with Bitrix24. So starting off with pre-sale support, so we can really help you to fully evaluate the Bitrix24 system to see if it could be a good fit for what you're trying to achieve. And if it is a good fit, we can then implement the system for you. So we can build out all of the modules and really design it out exactly how you need it to work. If you're looking at the on-premise version, we can provide our hosting service, and then we also provide ongoing support and custom training to really help you maximize the value that you get from Bitrix24. Okay, so if you're maybe joining today's webinar to actually understand more about what Bitrix24 is in general, let's just cover a few of the key elements of what the Bitrix24 system is. Okay, so Bitrix24 essentially is a collaboration suite of well in excess now of 40 different tools that you can use to help you to manage your business. And there are now over 15 million businesses around the world that use Bitrix for their day-to-day operations. And it's available in two different editions. So we have the Bitrix24 Cloud and we have the Bitrix24 self-hosted solution. And in terms of pricing, so prices, they start from $49 per month for a cloud-based system, or if you're looking at a self-hosted, when we say that it's essentially a private cloud version of Bitrix, that starts at $3,590 for the first 12 months. And then in year 2 and ongoing annually, you'll pay a 50% renewal fee to continue to access the system. Okay, so what we'll go through today then is the telephony functionality that's available within Bitrix. So we'll see how we can use Bitrix telephony as a built-in phone system. So it's very simple to start to utilize the telephony infrastructure that's inside Bitrix. But it also, we'll see how if you wanted to integrate with your existing phone infrastructure, we'll see how we can integrate with an existing PBX. We'll then take a look at the integration in the CRM module of Bitrix, and that's a really key integration that we have out of the box to summarize all of the call recordings and see all of that call history. And we'll also see there is reporting, so we can build dashboard reports that analyzes that telephony information. And just to summarize, it is a very low starting cost point to use the Bitrix telephony. So if we're renting a Bitrix number, it's only going to cost between $4 to $6 per month for renting the number. And as we go through today's webinar, if you have any questions, just add them into the question box on YouTube. We are live today, so we can answer any questions that you have. Okay, so let's just delve now into the different options that we have for telephony. So as we can see here, we have two options. Okay, so we have option 1, which is Bitrix24 Telephony. So to be clear, when we say Bitrix Telephony, this is where we're renting a number from Bitrix24. So this is going to be a brand new number. You can't port an existing number that you have to Bitrix Telephony. That's just something you need to be aware of. Okay. Or then the second option, if you need to keep your existing number and integrate your existing phone infrastructure, then that would be an integration, which is falling under option 2. So we're going to take a look at both options today. But the first option, let's take a look at option 1, which is Bitrix telephony. So what we'll do then is we'll see how we can set up a new number using the telephony options we have available. We'll then see how we can set up the virtual phone system. So it allows us to set up call routings, recordings, and really configure the infrastructure for the number we've rented. And then we'll see how that information integrates into the CRM area of Bitrix. And we'll also see what the soft phone application looks like. So let's go across to our Bitrix system. Now, in terms of Bitrix telephony, this is available on both the cloud and the on-premise version of Bitrix. Okay, so if there are certain features where you need a specific tier of Bitrix, I will make you aware of that. But if you are new to Bitrix, then what you want to do to access the telephony module is go into your left-hand menu and find telephony. Now, it could be in the hidden section if you can't see it, or you can also use the universal search area here at the top and just search telephony, and that will open up the module. Okay, now, one thing to point out on here is I'm an administrator. So I got the access rights to create numbers, configure the settings on the telephony numbers that we've rented. So it's important to remember there are access permissions that you can set up in telephony. So here, what we can do is we can set up different roles. Okay, so here we can create a role, and within this role, we can then customize the permission configuration. So some key areas where you would configure those permissions is on user settings, telephony settings, maybe being able to see the statistics of the telephony calls. You can control who can access these areas, who can customize those sections. So if you do have some users who aren't able to do all of the functionality that we're going to look at here, it's most likely because those permissions have been set up. Okay, so the first option then is Bitrix telephony. So this option here is where we rent a number directly from Bitrix24. Okay, so when we click into here, you'll see there are the countries that are available for renting of a number. Okay, so let's say if I'm in the UK and then I'm wanting to rent a local number, so you can here select the different types of numbers, whether it's mobile, national number, toll-free, etc. And then from here, you can then select, so for a local, I could then select a local regional number here, so you can customize the region there. Okay, and we can see here that's going to cost $6 per month to rent this number. Okay, so that's what you need to be aware of. It's not the same across every country. There are slight variations. You may pay a bit more, you may pay a bit less. Okay, and one thing you need to be aware of is when you're renting numbers in a lot of countries, you'll see this message here where you have to upload verification documentation to show that you have a valid postal address in the country that you're wanting to rent a number from. So that's very important, because if you don't upload that verification, then most likely you're not going to be able to rent that number and they will decline the application. Okay. And once we've rented the number, just to be clear here, all of your inbound calls, they will be included with the charge of that rental. Okay, $6 per month. And then outbound calls, they'll be charged per minute based on the country that you're calling to. And those call rates, you can see here, if you go to bitrix.com/prices, then /calls, you'll see all of those call rates. And these are the popular regions, but you can click onto here and this will open up all of those call rates that are available. So what I will do is I will add this into the chat on YouTube, so you can then access that call rate summary page. Okay, and once we've done that and we've uploaded and topped up our credit, you need to have a balance on here to be able to make calls. You can then start to use that number directly inside your Bitrix system. That's how simple it is for connecting a number. But what you probably want to do from that point is now customize the actual setup of that line. So setting up call routings, setting up your groups for who's going to answer calls to that number. So what we can do is we can come into the My Numbers section. And then this is where it will display all of your numbers. And then inside here, what we can do is you'll see all of the different settings for each phone number. And we can then start to configure this. So for example, for the welcome, we can then configure what happens, whether we play some music or process the call. You can set up a voice menu. Okay, so this is an IVR structure and set up. So inside here, we can set our configuration for maybe allowing the customer to select from different options. Okay, so let's say if we, as a customer, select option 1, that'll go through to the sales team. Whereas if they select option 2, then that's going to go to our technical support team. You can start to see how we can start to route calls to the correct teams at the correct time. And this also improves the customer experience. So I can go into here and then relay the message that will get spoken to the customer. Okay, so we can add that into here. And then you can choose the language, the speed, the volume that the message will get relayed to the customer when they call in. Or you can also upload an audio file. So actually, if you wanted to just pre-record what the message is going to be, and then that would then get displayed to the client. So you've got both options available to you there. And as you saw then, we set up those queue group settings. So if you come into here, further down, we've got the options for our queue groups. So I can select create new groups. But let's say if I go into my sales group, I can then customize here. This is the sales group. So I can see all of the users that are in this group. So I can customize this as people maybe move around different departments, who is within this group. And then we can also specify how calls are distributed amongst that group. So you've got lots of options, very granular options to configure within here. Okay, and that's the same if we move on to look at some other areas such as the CRM integration. So again, a very popular feature. It's really important to get this set up correctly. So for example, you may want to, for if a number is not already registered inside the CRM, if they call to your rented number, we could here then automatically create a new lead inside the system. And we can then also assign what the source is. And from here as well, we can set up our recordings. So if you want to have the calls recorded inside the system, we can tick the save recording of all calls option. And probably what you may want to do is set up a warning message just to warn the client that these calls are being recorded. Okay. Now, a feature that we have also now with the Bitrix Copilot, when those calls get recorded, we then get a call transcription. So all of the information on that call, we can have that transcribed directly inside the record, inside the CRM system. And what I'll show you shortly, we can also set up analysis of the call. So we can set up call scripts, and then we can assess the user's conversation that they had with the prospect or with the client against your summarized script assessment piece. Okay, so that there is a look at our recording settings. You also have your working hours, so you can customize what time your staff are available to be answering calls, and then out of those call hours, you can set up what the off-hour call processing metrics would be, whether it goes to voicemail, or you may have call forwarding to a specific number. Okay, so you can see here, there are a lot of different options. And what's really nice with it is you're able to customize the settings on every single phone that you rent inside Bitrix. So that's not a global setting. You customize it on each individual number. And so now what we want to do is let's go into the CRM and let's see where that information gets stored when someone calls into the system. So if we go into our CRM, and we do have a webinar that covers the CRM in totality. So we won't go into too much detail on the CRM in today's session. But if we come into a client's record here, you can see in the activity stream this call history that gets saved in the system. So we can play those calls back, see all of the history, who's responsible. So you have that within the system. And we can click to call directly through the system here as well and have those calls recorded. And what's very useful as well is if you use the Bitrix mobile app, then you're able to answer calls through the mobile app and also make calls as well through the mobile application. Okay, so that's how we can then have the calls integrated. And there are some other really nice integrations we now have. Now we've rented a number through the system. So let's say in our lead database, I could select a group of leads, let's say, and then I could start to dial directly through the system. So you've got a semi-automated dialer directly through the system. So we can make calls, go on to the next call, and then process that through the system. So it's a very nice way to be able to, first of all, you bulk upload your leads, and then we can start to click and call directly through the application. And as we've seen, all those calls then get recorded inside the system. Then one other way you can also run telephony integration inside here is using CRM automations. So you can also set up robocalls. Okay, so in this example, when the lead record hits the first stage here, the new lead stage, in 1 day's time, we're going to send a robocall, and we can then dynamically populate the robocall with information from the system. So you see you have that integration inside the platform here. So that gets processed, and then we have that data synchronized inside Bitrix. Now, one thing to point out when we're doing any type of robocall, it's the same type of infrastructure that we have. So you can select when they make that call, when the client answers, it's going to automatically play the message from here, or you can upload an audio file again into the system. So you can customize again if you want it to be maybe more personal with your voice and tone. You would upload your own audio file. But with the text, again, you can choose the language, you can choose the speech speed and the volume through the system here. And you have the same option there as well. If I just briefly bring you into the marketing module. So we've seen there the audio call option. We have the same option inside marketing. The key difference here is once we've set up the call recording, then what we will do is we can select the segment. So this is more of a bulk robocall distribution process that we set up. So all of the data of your contacts and leads feeds into here, and then I could select. So for example, I might just want to send this to all of our investor contacts through the CRM system. Okay, so that there is a look at the Bitrix24 telephony. So as you can see, it's a very intuitive, pretty simple way to start to integrate telephony into the system. And as we've seen, it's a very low setup cost. You're talking $4 to $6 per month on average for renting of the number. One other thing to point out, there may be a one-off setup fee cost as well, depending on what country you're renting the number from. But that information, it will display on the page when you're renting the number. As we saw when I rented one from the UK, it showed us that it was a $6 rental per month. In that page, it would say if there's a one-time setup cost. Okay, so that was option one, Bitrix telephony. Option two, which we mentioned at the start, is integrations. So for some businesses, it's just simply critical that they keep their existing number. They may have had it for a long time. They can't now lose that number. So in that case, or if you have a really competitive, maybe telephony contract and you want to keep that existing call rate, you have really the only option is to integrate your existing phone infrastructure. And we have a few different ways that we can create those integrations. Okay, so first of all, option one is the Bitrix SIP connector. So this is where we integrate either an Office or a cloud PBX into Bitrix. And when we say PBX, that's your private branch exchange. Okay. So what we see inside here is you've got, obviously depends if you have an Office PBX or a cloud PBX, but the process is almost identical for both. You then connect that into the system. So let's say if we have a cloud PBX here, I click on the Connect Cloud PBX. This then opens up a form. So you then need to input the credentials here onto the system that will then connect the PBX into Bitrix. Now, when you first connect, you get 60 minutes free to configure and check it works. Okay, so you can then test outbound calls to make sure that works on the platform. And then once you've tested it works correctly, you will then need to pay this SIP connector fee. And that is $49 per month to have that SIP connection of your PBX. And like I say, it's exactly the same for the Office PBX. You get the time to test, you would buy the SIP connector. The only difference is the information on the form is slightly different for the Office PBX. So that's the first option for an integration. It's using the SIP connector to connect your telephony infrastructure into Bitrix. Option two is if that doesn't work or you don't have a PBX, then it's going into the marketplace inside Bitrix. So inside here in the marketplace, there are quite a few options for integrating an existing telephony application. So for example, very popular is Zadama PBX. You can see here over 50,000 installations of this application have been connected to integrate Zadama as a PBX into your Bitrix system. So you need to check if your telephony provider has an integration inside the App Store, and you just need to make sure there may be certain specific connections that you need to have completed. So you might need to have a certain tier of Zadama and a certain tier of Bitrix. So you just need to go through the page here and check to make sure you hit those limitations first of all to be able to use the application. So that's the second option. And then the third option, if none of those options will work, it's looking at using the API that Bitrix has available to actually create a custom integration between your telephony system and Bitrix. But just to be aware, in terms of what pricing, that could well be in excess of 15,000 US dollars to create that integration. We have done it quite a few times for businesses because it can be a very critical integration. So if that's something you want to discuss, then we can start to answer questions and see if that is an option for you moving forward. Okay, so as I say, if you have any questions, please do put them into the chat. But if we just move on now, we have talked quite a lot about costs already on this session. So let's just summarize what those costs are. So if you're renting a Bitrix number, you have those telephony call rates. So as we mentioned, you're looking around $4 to $6 per month to rent the number. Then inbound calls are included in that cost, and outbound calls, they're charged per minute based on the country that we call to. So the call rates are in the YouTube link here, and that's the page where we can see what those outbound call rates are. If you're going to use the SIP connector, so that's going to cost $49 per month. It's a flat fee. There's no other option there. That is what it will cost every single month to use the SIP connector. Or the other, if you're going to use one of the marketplace apps, I think the most of those apps are free, but you will just have to double check. There may be a cost for installing the app. Or the final option is an integration, which, as I say, could cost in excess of 15,000 USD, depending on how tight that integration needs to be with your infrastructure. Okay, so that is a look there at the costs. And then moving on to look at reporting. So Obviously, we've seen how the information within the telephony module that talks with the CRM, so we can have calls recorded. But we also have some really nice reporting features available inside the telephony module. So first of all, if again, you can set permissions for who can access these areas because you may not want all of your staff to have access. But if we come into the call details area, this is where we can see the entire history, essentially a call log of every call that takes place in the system. You can customize the layout of this table. You can configure what details you want to see in the display. And you can also then filter in here based on lots of different attributes. So it's very easy to drill down maybe into certain calls within the platform. And then you can also export this data out of Bitrix once you've got the table designed how you want it to display information. But then essentially what we also have is a more visual way of interpreting that call information. So we also have the dashboard area where we can, as you can see dashboard reports that analyzes different measures of information on our calls. So a very popular dashboard here is the call density dashboard. So we can see instantly where we're starting to either receive a heavy amount of calls and when we're missing and not answering those calls. So this can be really useful for call centers or where there's heavy inbound call activity. It gives us a clear identity really of where we're falling down in terms of performance of answering calls. So we can now start to schedule more people here. Tuesday 4 till 5, we need to start having more staff on to make up for the missed calls that we're seeing here. And then there's other types of employee involvement reports or overall call durations amongst your team. So there's a lot of analysis that we can do from the data of telephony's infrastructures of Bitrix. Okay, so that there is a look at reporting, and that brings us to an end of today's Bitrix24 Total Telephony webinar. So we've seen how we can create a virtual phone system inside Bitrix and how we have quite a few different options for integrating existing phone providers into the system. We've also seen how that information integrates into the CRM. So we have the entire call history saved inside the record and a very easy click to call infrastructure within the record to call our clients. And as we've just seen there, we have quite deep and robust reporting options to analyze our call history in Bitrix. And as we mentioned, there is a very low setup cost to start to utilize the system. So that brings us to an end of today's webinar. Here are a selection of our up and coming webinars. We are here every other Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And if you have any other questions in the meantime, I've just put our email address in sales@intraface.com. Put that into the YouTube chat area so you can drop an email to us. We'll be happy to have a call to discuss your needs in more detail. So thank you very much for your time today. I look forward to seeing you all in the near future on our future webinars. Bye for now.